I think working from home is one of the worst disciple-making things in America. It might be great for your schedule and maybe even your family. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but if you want to be a disciple maker, really,
You mean to be a sent one, we have to leave our house, bro? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that you gotta meet people.
You're listening to the Sent Ones podcast, where we help disciples of Jesus discover their calling, develop their skills, and get deployed to their mission.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sent Ones podcast. This is Feeney and super pumped to be with you, and all-star Josh is again here. Thanks, and we're glad to have his voice, but I'm really excited to introduce a friend and have him share just a little bit about himself. Rodger has been a friend of mine for a while, and I've always gleaned a ton from just his attention to detail, just really understanding what's going on when there's movements of God in the world, and even specifically as we're going to talk about in America. But Rodger, do you just want to start us by giving kind of a 1-minute intro of yourself, where you're at, what you do, and then we'll let Josh kind of ask the first question.
Sure, yeah. So, Rodger, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I actually came to Christ in Raleigh in 2012 when I was at NC State and was taught to multiply disciples immediately. So, immediate mobilization. I was out sharing the gospel. Within 2 weeks of coming to Christ, started my first Discovery Bible study 3 months after coming to Christ. And God, through me, honestly, it was a train wreck. It really didn't go that great, but God can still do it. And so still that woman eventually came to Christ, and her family eventually came to Christ, and not by my doing, not by my good skills, but by the Lord's grace. And so it's kind of cool to set me on a path of multiplication and just learning that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly at first, So a lot of so over the years, just been pursuing that. Yeah, multiplying disciples in churches in America, doing it in Raleigh, and I kind of, as the failing forward, we always go to Scripture first to learn, like, how did Jesus do this? How did the early church do this? When we're trying to problem solve, we hit a barrier. But the second thing we do is, like, what is the Holy Spirit doing nowadays? Let's talk to people who have gone before us. And so, kind of in 2019, I started to interview people broadly across America, anyone who I could find multiplying in America, and just did a lot of research, started talking to dozens and dozens of movement leaders, network leaders that have gotten to generations of disciples in churches. As far as I know, it's the most extensive, data gathering and recording of information of any disciple-making movement work in America, which I could be wrong about that. So maybe somebody else has done more, but kind of culminated in, I was just kind of communicating my findings on social media and different things, and was getting good feedback. So it culminated in actually writing a book called Movements in America. So it kind of has a lot of the learnings, both from Scripture and from the stories. It uses only case studies from the United States, and it's actually the first book published by Sent Ones Publishing, on Sent Ones podcast right now, so it's really exciting.
Boom.
Yeah.
Sent Ones Publishing.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
We had a publishing arm until right now. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, now we know.
Now we know. And now everybody else out there knows. So
exactly.
Sent Ones Publishing, the only book we got right now is Rodger's. So
it's the best one.
it is by far the best book we've ever published.
Oh, you guys are too generous. Wait until that second book is published by someone else, then we'll see.
There you go. Well, let's talk about that, Rodger, because that's fascinating. There's been a lot of studies done globally about movements in different parts of the world, but to really drill down into movements that are happening in America, I'd love to chat through what your top findings were. And so I don't know if we want to maybe hit one at a time and discuss a little bit, but would love to kind of hear from you, man. What were your top findings, and how we could and how our listeners could apply it to their lives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good question, and something I've really thought about, because some of the stuff is very similar or the same to movements around the world, like things like you need to be sharing the gospel, like abundant seed sowing, looking for persons of peace, a lot of prayer, like any movement starts as a prayer movement, even having discovery teaching during, a discipleship gathering or church gathering to help keep it robust but simple enough that it can reproduce. These sorts of things. I can unpack any of that because it's all really important. But I think the thing that I realized, why is there a movement happening, let's say, in rural China versus the cities of America, is a piece of social isolation, really, in that those environments are very relationally connected. And so let's say you find a God-prepared person that's ready to receive the word of God and ready to receive God's mission and going to take it. They already know probably dozens or hundreds of people that they could share it with in their village because it's just so strong relationally. Whereas in America, if you lead someone to Christ, they might know like 5 people who don't know Jesus. Like really, it's so bad that the Surgeon General said it's an epidemic in America. They released a warning, even saying how bad it is for physical health of just social isolation is as bad as smoking 13 cigarettes a day. So, it's like if you're thinking about community transformation, sometimes just building community might be the best thing for someone's health. But that's a side note. So what I realized is those that are getting the multiplication in America versus the ones who are trying to implement movement principles but not getting the multiplication is the ones who are getting the multiplication are very intentional to do all those things I talked about, like abundantly seed sow, have simple biblical and reproducing tools, while also building relationship community at the same time. So I think the error that we can get to in America is you build a relationship a long time and community, but have no missional thought. But then the other error that we can kind of swing to in the movement world is we're just going to share, train without thought of like really building those relationships as well. And so that comes from how you share the gospel. Like, are you going into relationally connected communities and trying to be intentional about that? Or are you just sharing with kind of one-off strangers? Are you even trying to use events with intent to build community? But then even churches, like if you're starting a church in a home or discipleship groups, are they connected together to be like a family of churches? It makes sense very easily in like these parts of like Asia or Africa where movements are happening. People are like, oh yes, I know all of them. We're going to be a family of churches. But in America, we think like, oh, we start a church is going to be isolated and alone. Which in the prevailing model, like the bigger church, that makes more sense. There's more people, but when it's like 10 people in a home, you got to just have that family to have like, the other 5 churches, you can have 50, 60 people, and rely on. Those are just some things that I learned is that you got to have those intentional pieces for a community
Man,
across the board.
that's good, bro. And I heard a guy, he was a pastor who planted multiple churches, grew them. He became a adjunct professor at the college that I went to many years ago, and he had a quote. I don't even know if it was his, but he said fairly regularly to us, he said, "You've got to always remember, methods are many, principles are few. Methods change often, principles never do." And what you're pulling out, Rodger, some of those first things that you mentioned are movement principles all across the world, right? And we've got to remember that this isn't about, we're not married to methods here. We're not married to specific ways to do these things. We're boiling it down to the principles behind New Testament Christianity at the end of the day. What did Jesus actually start? How did he create a movement? And what you're hitting on, bro, I mean, abundant seed sowing, looking for peoples of peace, prayer, fasting, all of these things. I mean, they're in movements all over the world and the ones in America. Where cultural contextualization deeply matters is with this community piece. A lot of countries, man, already have deep community, like you said. They already know how to live in community. They already are. And so bringing the gospel into those situations, it just redeems the community they already have. But here, we've got to then take an extra step of creating community at the same time as the gospel is spreading, which is a really interesting fact, that you brought up, man. What are you saying that are some of the better methods or principles around creating that community in such a isolated society like the U.S.? Do you have any good models or principles that you found as you've done research?
Yes. I mean, I could articulate about 5 or 6.
Okay.
So I'll run down a few. Everything from like just the initial point of I'm just starting to share the gospel to church to teaming. But I think what a lot of people have grabbed onto as I've communicated is that entry, that kind of how are you going to engage with lost people piece. The first and most important that you see in the Bible is reach your oikos. So that's your relational network. So Jesus, he went to Nazareth right after his baptism. Heck, at his baptism, his cousin baptized him and he found his first disciples through his cousin. I mean, he's going to his relational network, his oikos first. And I think that for a while, I and my team didn't do that or didn't encourage people to do that because we knew that not a lot of people have a very strong oikos. But there's a few who do. There's a few people who like really know a lot of lost people who really want to receive Jesus and follow Jesus. And so if you don't first push, like say, don't go to 20%, 50%, 90% of your oikos, go to 100%. Like push that first, because you really might find that people are going to come to know Jesus, and they don't need to go beyond that, really. So the second thing is in passages like Luke 9, Luke 10, Matthew 10, very well-known passages in the mission world, like Jesus sent out his disciples and then 70 others in pairs, 2 by 2, to share in towns and villages. And again, this makes sense in rural communities where there's small towns and villages that are very connected. You find a person of peace, and largely we see that person of peace reaches the community. And so how I wrongly try to apply that, or not wrongly, but maybe not as fruitfully try to apply it, is like, let me go find an apartment complex and go sharing and find people. And like we would see people come to Christ, baptized, even all this stuff. But like long term, it wouldn't sustain because they didn't know enough people. Like that community, they didn't know anyone in it, right? And so we realized we needed to find like something like a village, like just in a city, so like an urban village, right? And kind of articulated it with the method kind of articulated as BLT communities. So BLT is an acronym that stands for a community where you can build relationships naturally with lots of lost people, and you can tell them the gospel. So BLT. So
I
build
prefer
relationships
bacon,
naturally.
lettuce, and tomato, but that's okay.
Yeah, you can eat it BLT while finding a BLT community.
Not contextualized for our Muslim friends, but that's okay.
No. Yeah, if you're going to Muslims, don't do that. But but like our friend, out in California, Troy, he was going to a skate park with his sons. They like to skate, and they could build relationships naturally because they skateboarded. He was there with his sons. Like it wasn't weird. He wasn't being creepy. And naturally, he just goes up to. They have lots of lost people, so they're sharing the gospel. But he goes up to a guy who has a T-shirt with a cross on it, and starts to talk with him. Say, hey, I like the cross on your T-shirt. And he's like, the guy, his name is Max, and he starts to blow him off, like thinking that he's making fun of him because it's Southern California and nobody's a Christian. But Troy's like, no, seriously. He just laughed it off, like, no, I'm a Christian for real. Max was like, oh, cool, I came to Christ recently, and I've been sharing the gospel a lot. And they met up for coffee after that. And he said, well, you share the gospel a lot. How you doing, like, following up and discipling the people? He's like, man, I don't know how. Like, I've been wanting to know how, I just don't. But Troy didn't know he found a person of peace. Max, in this community of skaters, was such an evangelist. He started leading people to Christ like crazy, and he could gather them together very easily. And then he went back to his home in Arizona, where he had already led people to Christ and started discipling them, started churches in home that multiplied. That's a very good BLT community. Troy could build relationships. There was lots of lost people there, and Max could tap into them. He found a person of peace. And ultimately, the person of peace was already a believer, but then they could tell people the gospel so easily right there on the skate park.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I would say another big place actually for that is workplace. Like we really encourage people to like think through that. Like what's a workplace where there's lots of lost people and you can tell them the gospel. I think working from home is one of the worst disciple making things in America. It might be great for your schedule and maybe even your family. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but if you want to be a disciple maker, really consider that. But that's one thing.
You mean we sent one? We have to leave our house, bro? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. You gotta meet people.
Wow. Man.
Countercultural.
It's super counter. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, do you have more?
Yeah, I got more. I told you, I got like 6 or 7.
And there's more.
I know. So the reality is oikos, a lot of people don't have a strong one. And honestly, even BLT communities, sometimes it's hard to find them because people are socially isolated. And so a key thing is like, well, how do you build community with a bunch of strangers? Like you don't know them, they don't know each other. Like an apartment complex or your neighborhood maybe. And that's where events with intent come in. And so this is something that when I first heard it, I was like, this is lame. Like I was in Houston. There's people like Guy and Kelly Caskey, Trey 9. They're doing these hip hop hope events in low income communities where they have Christian rappers out there rapping and sharing their testimony. And yeah, okay, a bunch of kids are getting baptized. They're starting some Discovery Bible studies in homes, but it's not that cool. I mean, events with intent. But then I learned that actually is probably the most key thing. I need to be humbled by God and sit at the feet of these people who had gone before me. But just that sense of like, if you don't know people, Trey Nine, one of the guys I just mentioned, he made a Facebook post I just loved where he said, "You want to build relationships and share the gospel, then share the gospel. That's cool. Do it. I like to share the gospel while building relationships." It's just that sense. Like oftentimes we think about these community building events and we just think it's about the event, but it's like no, it needs to have some intent behind it. And so came up with an acronym just recently. ChatGPT helped me out for this one. So shout out to
Oh man, listen,
ChatGPT.
if this is ChatGPT, I don't want to hear it, Rodger. Okay.
Okay. Well, it was my idea. Let's just say it was
There
my
you go.
idea.
There you go.
Actually,
That's much better.
I came up with an idea and then Feeney told me it wasn't that good. So then I asked ChatGPT to refine it. That's actually what happened.
Oh, I actually didn't get it. You had to explain to me the mnemonic device. That probably was like, well, I have to lower this down to the general readership
Yeah.
level. Was why
It was not simple enough. It was not. So here's what it is. So if you have an event that's frequent, so you want it to be frequent, you want it to be intentional to get to disciple making, and you want it to be targeted to the community that you're in. So FIT, that events with intent fit into a disciple making strategy, right? FIT. Frequent.
Oh, come on, somebody.
I know. See, this is better. It's better.
It's way better than whatever you told Feeney. I agree.
Yeah, it is. So I think, like, if you think, just analyze kind of a normal events in the church community. These are great stuff. I'm not saying they're bad, but oftentimes, like, maybe they're not frequent. It's like, hey, this is our missions week. Like, we're going to go out and help a bunch of people. All good stuff. Not criticizing that at all. But it's really kind of hard to build relationships in just like a week, right? So what if there's some follow-up, like maybe you do a 1 day a week, that you're going and you can start to build relationships. Intentional. So a lot of times, let's say that mission week, there's not intentional follow-up besides come to my church. And probably some people do, but there's a lot of people who just don't. And so we need to be intentional, like how are we going to follow up and disciple? And then targeted to the community. I think this is something that we do really well, but I did hear that Hip Hop Hope, some people try to do it in a Chinese neighborhood. And I was like, that's just not targeted at that community. I just don't know a lot of Chinese people that are into rap. I mean, maybe they're out there. I'm sure there are. But like my community is more middle class. And so like a cookout would work better. That'd be more targeted. Or a game night with my friends, right? And so doing these events with intent that are frequent, intentional, and targeted, you can start to build relationships with even strangers and form a new community and get to disciple making. And like I said, people in Houston, I mean, they've started, I think, probably at least a dozen churches doing that now. And it's starting to reproduce and it's seeing a lot of people come to Christ, which is really cool.
That's great.
So
let's say somebody wants to start one of those. Have you found a good rhythm, like the frequency that has been the best, like whether it's weekly or monthly or whatever, or is it just important that it's consistent?
Yeah, I think consistency is a lot more important. It's basically frequent enough that you can legitimately build relationships is what it is. And, you really have to just consider like, what's your capacity? Like I'm not trying to burn anyone out. Like you got bills to pay, you got a lawn to mow, but what can you do? And so we should all be trying to go to our oikos for sure. But then after that, it's like, do you have time to go find a BLT community? Do you have time to do a event with a tent? You might not have time for all that, but you can do one or two of those, right? And so I think a lot of people are in that place of just trying to find that first person of peace, just trying to get to salvation, starting their first gathering. And so I think that has really resonated. Those pieces have really resonated with a lot of people as I've kind of talked. And as people have communicated back to me, like, hey, I really liked what you said here. Actually, literally somebody on a Facebook page just asked me for an update on BLT communities about something I posted 3 years ago. So that's what I'm talking about. It's resonating with people. And so that's why I bring it up the most.
Yeah. It recently helped me. I got invited to basically be a chaplain at a flag football league, which let me tell you, based on the language, I would not take my kids to. But I walk in there and there's like 50 plus people and they're like all know each other. They're introducing themselves to me without me even initiating them. And I'm free to start talking about asking them how their life's going, asking how I can pray for them, get into the gospel. And I was like, because I had been talking to Rodger, I was like, oh, this is a BLT community. Like, they don't exist everywhere, but when you find one, and I would just put that call out if you're listening, like have your eyes open for those because they're actually rare, as Rodger shared with the social isolation. But I just encourage us, have our eyes open for when those are there, because those are actually key places to see just as much of a village as Jesus saw the woman at the well, village of Samaria, right? Like an actual literal physical village. We need to see these BLT communities as those.
Yeah.
So
that's
just
beautiful.
wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And honestly, the truth is the story that you told, Rodger, with Troy in California with that guy at the skate park, I think so often, a lot of times, if people have more of an evangelistic bent, they assume people of peace are always going to be lost people. But the truth is, we live in a nation that has a bunch of Christians, and some of them are really discontented with lukewarm, average, run of the mill
Mhm.
Christianity.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be times where the Lord just, introduces us to people that are already believers. I mean, you look at Jesus's disciples, many of them were, decently good Jewish boys, like that's who they were. And they were from the people of God. Now, some came from very sinful, shameful backgrounds, but some of them were just good Jewish kids who knew and longed for the Messiah's coming, and they decided that Jesus is it, and they're going to follow him. And so just last week, man, I took a buddy of mine out. We went out on a prayer walk, and I'm going to be honest, dude. Being in South Asia, we never did the door to door thing. We didn't need to, honestly. And so in America, I'm like, I don't know that I want to do this like door to door thing. I don't like. And so we go to this trailer park community, and we're just gonna. At first, we're just saying we're just gonna walk around and pray and wait for somebody to like come out of their trailer or something. I don't know. But as we got going, the Lord really began to prompt us to start knocking on some doors and praying for people. And we went up to this one door; it had a cross on it, and we knocked, and this couple came out. Man, they are on fire for Jesus. They love Jesus. They know everyone in the community. They've been there for years. And now they're wide open to start a discovery Bible study in their trailer. They just needed some help and training and equipping. That's all they needed. And so we thought we were going looking for lost and hurting people, and we found some and we prayed for some. But the truth is, the real people God sent us there for was that couple that's already
Mhm.
in the community. They already know everybody in the trailer park, and they're ready now to open their home to reach out to their friends and family. And so we just need to have, like you said, Roger and Feeney, we need to just have eyes to see what the Lord's doing. And sometimes it's going to be Christian people that he leads us to.
Absolutely.
Okay. I wanted to ask just any key insights on the like fighting social isolation, tongue twister, towards the end of just the work, right? Whether that's leadership development, church formation, like we're just would love to hear how that same concept works itself out as we want to see disciples established and leaders raised up.
Yeah, so I would say this is getting to something where, what we have been talking about is like starting the work, basically. This is getting to where you're trying to sustain the work. But you kind of need to start with this in mind. It shouldn't be a big focus of time, but start with it in mind. Is one thing we're recognizing is the let's say the gatherings or the churches that start in homes, the ones that sustain really well for a long time are the ones that are connected very intentionally to other churches around them. So it could be a network of just churches that meet in homes that all have a common name, common background. Like the network I'm a part of is Movement Network, and we very intentionally try to see each other, have shared leadership. We even do monthly all churches get together, kind of where we even have some directive teaching, like sermons sometimes, and just other things. Or there's a few examples of like hybrid models where they have a Sunday gathering that you might expect out of normal church in America, but then they have churches and homes that very intentionally release the priest in that regard. But it's just something where,
Can I stop you there real quick,
yes,
Roger?
yeah.
On that point, have you seen a difference in fruit when it comes to people that are only doing decentralized network stuff versus more of a hybrid situation where they have a gathering but they're releasing the priests well in homes? Or is it pretty much as long as they're intentional about releasing priests, then it's been good either way?
Yeah, I would say that as long as they do get to the point where they're releasing the priest, either one has been very, very fruitful and effective. I would say that because it's such a different paradigm to what a lot of churches do in America, that there's been it's taken a while to find churches that would actually take on that willingness. And so like there's been hundreds of churches that have been trained on some DMM principles, and it just takes a little bit of time. I would say COVID really shook things up. If people had time to take a step back and ask, uh, "Is this really what we need to be doing?" And from that, we've seen more churches say, "Yeah, we want to make a shift." But yeah, as long as you're reaching the priest and you're really trying to be that kind of family of churches together, that network of churches together, whether it be a hybrid or something else.
Yeah.
But I'm a part. Movement Network is a decentralized network of churches, but still, like I said, we have a larger gathering that we do once a month all together. So I mean, is it? I mean, yes, we don't own a building, but we have our elders preach a sermon. You know, I mean, during that time, you know,
Whoa,
and so
hold on, Rodger. Hold
yeah,
on.
I know. That's once a month, and then
It's
the
great,
other
man.
three weekends a month we're doing discovery based, 3/3 only type of thing. But we found that we can balance that together. So I mean, what I'm saying is like we're a decentralized network, but how much different from a hybrid thing are we doing?
That's
And
great, man.
so
That's awesome.
yeah, and I think that comes to kind of one thing that I really struggle with, but also is with this, is just shared leadership. Like, there's no isolated workers in the kingdom of God. There's no lone rangers. I want to be isolated, and I want to be a lone ranger. Like, growing up, I did not like team sports, even before I came to Christ. Like, I just played in the dirt when I was on the Little League baseball team. I just kind of ran off and did my own thing when I was in soccer. That's why I started being a runner. I could just focus on me, you know? I know cross country is a team sport, but I really don't have to worry about anyone else. I can just worry
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
And I think that has been very difficult for me to say, like, we really need each other. We need different giftings with us banding together. And it's something where we can so easily say, like, you focus on your area, I'll focus on my area, and we'll see each other occasionally. When the more healthy and fruitful practices saying, like, hey, let's meet together regularly for problem solving. Let's actually go to these things together. Like, I'm going to meet with this pastor, but why don't I invite a few friends? I mean, Jesus, when was he by himself? Like, it was basically when he was alone with the Father. And otherwise, or at the cross. Like, there wasn't really
Yeah.
any other times. He always had people with him.
And
And
I
I think we need.
do you sense that that's stirring more in America, Rod? Because what I'm sensing is I think the old wineskin per se, especially with apostolic kind of people, pioneering driven people, is to work alone. But I see more and more, man, apostolic kind of people longing for other apostolic people to run with and to band with and to join up with. Are you seeing that as well across the country?
Yeah, it's really a push and pull is what I see across the country. I think some people are exactly what you're saying. They're like, man, we need each other, and they're really looking at the word, like Paul and Barnabas and Timothy and Silas. They're all together. But then even in the zeal to multiply, it's saying, hey, we can multiply by just spreading out some. Like it's a really, I think it's a real tension, and like, don't organize it till you have it to organize. It's something that Guy Cassie says. Like, if you don't try to multiply until you have something to actually multiply. Like, band together, stay together, and as you raise up more leaders, then you can kind of multiply a bit more and have your own. Then you're multiplying teams. You're not just multiplying individuals.
Right, right. That's good,
And
man.
so I think there's some areas where people are very strongly like, yes, we want to band together, we want to work together. I think COVID also shook that up some of just being like, all right, who else can we work with, which is cool. And then there's some areas where I still see people kind of fighting that, and I have to fight that. So it's I'm putting myself in that boat, So I'm just talking to people. I talked with someone who was in the Middle East recently, and he said, if you have a party there and you invite 15 people, 20 are going to come. If you have a party in America and you invite 15 people, 11 are going to come.
Yeah.
Because there's just such a sense of like, let's just bring people along. Let's just invite people. It's just, again, the communal culture versus individualistic culture. So it's something where we literally are having to fight our own culture.
Yeah.
to see disciples multiply and really live out what we see in the Word. So
that's great, bro. Dude, this has been awesome. I think we need maybe a part 2 and 3, Rodger, to what we're doing right now. This is great. I mean, the Lord is stirring something here, and guys, those of you that are listening, man, like, I would encourage you just to listen through this again, watch through it again, and pick 1 or 2 action steps that you can take. Just like we encourage as we're making disciples, doing a discovery process, hearing the Lord, and then immediately doing what he says, what out of this podcast could you immediately take and then put into action? What are some of these events with intent that you could do? What are some BLT communities that you could look for in your community and begin to engage with and raise up people in order to reach them? What does it look like to intentionally go after community and to build community as you're going? And so, man, Rodger, thank you for your time today. Feeney, I'll pitch it to you at the end, man, just so you can talk about the book one more time, and then if you want to close us out, bro.
Yeah, plug Rodger. You're all, I'm sure, want to see the cover, but Movements in America, just recommend it to you guys. I don't know if you can see all my dog-eared pages as I've been reading it. So many good insights. I do want to have a future discussion. Actually, what we didn't talk about is how does this relate to the idea of still hitting those unreached people in places that are so dear to the Father's heart, right? And that is part of the discussion. We just ran out of time today, so I want to do that. But you can find that book. Rodger, feel free to correct me in a second, but pretty sure you can just look that up on Amazon. And then if you want to just follow Rodger as he's having ongoing conversations on these, it's movementsinamerica.substack.com. It's a Substack that Rodger set up where he's just continuing to share new insights or dial into some of what he's already shared here. So Rodger, any other good way to connect with you or anything I missed there?
No, you got that right. I will say sentones.com is being revamped right now, but once it gets revamped, the book will be linked there, and some of the posts even for my Substack will be in the blog on sentones.com. So if you really just go to sentones.com, you can find these resources as well soon. Maybe not right when this podcast comes out, but if you're listening, a week later.
Real soon. Real soon. That's great.
We just keep building this thing and as it flies. So I'm glad Rodger can tell me about the things that are happening on the website. Anyway, we appreciate you guys listening. Thanks so much, Rodger, just for your insights, man. You're a blessing to the kingdom, and excited to have more people get a hold of this. So until next time, we just encourage you guys as you're listening, live sent. Look for opportunities to live out your calling wherever God's placed you. And if there's a way we can help you along the way, start at sentones.com, but you can check out different social channels as well to connect with us. So thanks so much.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Sent Ones podcast. For practical next steps or more content like this, check us out at sentones.com, or you can subscribe with your favorite podcast provider. Hope to see you guys next time.